I was 65, just a youngster. And they had utility districts that they needed some things over in Africa. And one of my philosophies is, if you can free people and get them into an economic society, democracy is cool, but if you don't have an economic society, you have nothing. If you don't have the flow of money going, you have nothing. That's what the microfinancing is. Setting up a utility district and distributing electricity is just fine if someone keeps giving you money to create the electricity. But unless you have an economic system that flows in a circle where you get money back and you have good books to maintain this, it will die. When the money people leave, it disappears. Okay? It just disappears. Unless you have an economic monitoring system that is complete in itself, it can go on forever. I put my software in utility districts and cities because I chose to add value to people's lives. And I watch these ladies work 8, 10, 12 hours a day trying to get a job done where they only had one person doing it. And I got home at 5. That was a gift. And so I got to win and I got money. It was wonderful. Well, being 65, and finally picking to go over to Africa, that wonderful young age, I of course needed all my vitamins, so I picked up and I filled all my vitamins I got in, and I also had to get shots. I got 10,000 shots. So I headed over to Africa. Well, my first trip was over to, you had to go all the way to the Netherlands and then fly all the way from there to Kenya, and all the way from Kenya to Juba. Well, this is just about the trip. And it was, I'm heavy, so I always, everyone looks at me and says, oh no, you're going to sit on my aisle. And Terry told me, fat jokes aren't funny. Well, I had 2 really heavy ladies on the way in. We just had a ball after we got used to each other. That sat next to me. But I got down to Kenya. And I got out to and I looked in the airport. And the one thing they got in Kenya is 10,000 people. It's a main area for going through all of Africa. And the other thing they have is 2 seats for people to sit down and rest between flights. Well, I had about 6 hours, and you can't really leave the terminal. Because I got a permit to get into Sudan, but I didn't have anything to get into Kenya. So I had to sit in the Metropolitan Airport. So I sat down, and I looked at all these young kids with their hardy bodies, ready to go out and conquer Africa. And they would sit along the edge of the way there, and they would just fall asleep or do it, and I says, oh, I found my own spot. So I sat down, I sort of blended in, the 65-year-old old man with all these young kids. But one thing I noticed, I sat and looked. And what you can see when you're down on the ground are people's legs. I saw it. And they'd have these guys in big white robes, and they'd be walking along, and they'd have priests, and they'd be walking along, and they'd have all this. But I get to look at feet and trousers. So after a while, I says, there's something similar about all these men's feet. Women, it's a bunch of different stuff, but men, they had trousers, and they had regular shoes, and they had their trouser cut, back of the cuff was this far off the ground. And I looked and I says, all these macho men in the whole world are controlled by a fashion statement created by some people sitting over in New York or Paris. All these macho men. I said, so that was like, wow. And what's the industry controlled by mostly? These beautiful people called gays. And it just was the most wonderful thought for me to think about that. All the macho men in the world having the control factor being gay men. It was just funny. But anyway, after I got done with laughing for 15 minutes on that, I went onward to Juba, and we flew in, and as we flew down, I knew there was going to be a problem because there was wrecked planes all along the Juba airstrip. And then we pulled up to the front gate, and there were guys in AK-47s, about 5 of them on each side, waiting, you know. And so you walk between all those with your gear and your luggage, and you threw it in a pile, you picked it up, and then you go in there and you dump it all out. And then this man comes through for the inspections. And he comes through, and he goes through, and he comes under mine, and he looks, and he says, "Drugs!" Oh no! And I just stood there, and all of a sudden I heard these clicks from the AK-47 safeties going off, and all these people coming to me, and all these other people sort of scattering. And out comes this inspector, and the inspector comes over there, older guy, looks, and he says, "Drugs!" And I said, "No sir, no sir." I says, "Here, I got a prescription," because I just in case I got it. He looks and he says, "Oh, American, Californian." Yeah, oh. He walks away and everyone just scattered. I sat there, I was sure I was going to be in a Kenya jail. I mean, a Jew jail. And I didn't know what they were like until after I saw them. Oh, that would have been terrible. But I got it, I gathered all my stuff, I went out. And the fellow was sitting there that was giving me a ride back to he says, "I watched all that." He says, "and I was waiting to go down to the police station to get you out." He says, "You should have a really interesting trip here." Thank you.